Welcome to Inkwell Spoken Presents Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny. I am your host, Reggie Key, and today my guest with me is Michelle Bannister-Williams. Michelle, how are you doing?
I am well. Thank you.
Good to hear. So I want to thank you for coming in. I love your background. You know, this being Black History Month, February, you have a very dope picture in the background. So I like that. I'm be looking at that the whole time, trying not to
Yeah.
get.
It's 365 here. And I got my kids' school photos embedded in the corners there. So,
Oh my gosh, that's really dope. Okay, cool.
yeah,
I've said dope twice now. I don't know why.
thank you.
So, Michelle, I just wanted to launch right into it. My very first question for you on this show is, Michelle, do you consider yourself to be a genius?
So, genius, whether I consider myself, let's see. In some areas, yes. In some areas, I do know that I have achieved genius status.
Okay.
Whether others have acknowledged that or not, there are areas where I'm confident that I am a genius.
See, I like what you just said there. You said two things that I like. One, in some areas, because contrary to, I think, a lot of people's conditioned thinking, like geniuses don't know everything. Like
Mhm.
there is a specific lane that you operate at a high level, and it's okay to identify that as such. And then the second thing that you said that I like is, you know what, whether other people have recognized it or not, this is what I know I'm good at. And you have to be able to do that because there's a time when we launch out into whatever it is that we feel like we've been destined to do, where nobody's going to believe in what we're doing.
Mm.
And if we don't believe in it, first and foremost, it can't get to the masses the way it's intended to, because genius is not about just lifting yourself up. It's about helping others around you. And you can't help someone else around you if you don't feel like you have anything to contribute.
Very true. Very true.
So that's good. I'm glad you agree. Now I'm curious, what are some of these areas that you do see I almost want to say your giftedness, but this is all about genius. So what are the areas where you see your genius?
Yeah. So, just broadly speaking, I will say communication and writing are two areas.
Okay.
Um, Specifically, though, I am a racial reconciliation teacher. So, I teach in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space. Now, it's not my day job, but it is something I'm extremely passionate about and something I put a lot of time and energy behind. And it is the space where I feel most naturally gifted and supernaturally empowered to do the work. So that's one area where I know that I have genius. And that goes back to my comment about whether or not other people see it, because it's a tough arena
It
to
is very tough.
deliver. Yes.
The culture is all over critical race theory, from those who want to keep history relegated to, his story versus the
Right.
trueness of it. That explains why you have what you have in the background 24/7, 365 too. I like that. I
Yeah.
just did a workshop where I took this component of genius and put it within the context of the invisible innovators. That there are so many different things that we have contributed to society that are well known by the things that we've innovated, but the innovator remains invisible. You remember the movie Hidden Figures? A
Yes.
lot more hidden figures in every aspect of the industries that have changed the world. And so, I did this thing, and it actually was through my wife's job with her DE&I, within her initiative within her job. And so it's cool to kind of come off of that and be with somebody that's doing that as well in your workspace.
Yes.
So we're going to get into that. I feel it. I can already feel it kind of brimming to the surface. We're going to get a chance to talk about it some more. But as we get to that place, I want to follow up with my second question, Michelle, and ask you, who comes to mind? What face do you envision when you hear this word genius?
Hmm. So I think when I hear genius, I think the first thing that popped into mind was Prince, just musical genius.
Uh-huh.
And but it's more than that. It's bigger than just the music that he produced. It's about the capacity that he had and the talent that he had and his willingness to go against the grain and to really step into who he was. And that is what really set the stage for him becoming or stepping into his genius, I should say. I think he was always a genius as long as I've been aware of his talent.
That's good. I tell people, I don't say this enough, but genius is a disruptor. It goes into a system that and sees the status quo, which every status quo eliminates or marginalizes certain people from functioning in the inside of the thing, the system, the industry. And it says, no, this shouldn't be like this. We should do it better. And we know that Prince was definitely a disruptor in the music industry. I mean, he changed his whole name just to make a statement about you don't own me. And
Right.
you don't own the things that I create. And I'm going to make sure that you know about it, not just for himself. Remember, we talked about what genius does, but for others that will come after him. So
Yes.
I agree. He was a genius in his specific lane of music. But in truth, and we'll dabble into this more specifically in a little bit, but in truth, the music was his talent. And he used his talent to create a platform that then began to address the thing that he became passionate about. And it was the dysfunctionality and the ownership that was taken away from the artists within the industry.
Yes. Yes.
That's where his genius began to shine. And so that's what I talk about with you. So I have a quote, do you know who the number one answer is? I like that your answer is unique, but do you know who the number one answer is that I hear most times when I do this interview, when I do these workshops for schools and staff?
So my first instinct, and I didn't want to go here yet because I'm not sure if your religious affiliation was Jesus. That was what came to mind first.
Okay, so now that things just got interesting, Michelle, we just shifted gears. So I have two ways that I approach genius. One is through secular. We're getting to know each other as we're talking. I'm a minister, so you just opened up a whole other realm and depth and dimension to this that I didn't start with. I started off saying this is Inkwell Spoken Presents, but now I think I'm gonna have to shift to Manu Forte Ministries Presents Common Destiny, because you can get into the mind of Christ as the Bible calls it, with what the world recognizes as genius. So yes, that's not the number one answer, but that is an answer. When I talk to someone that's faith-based, they say Jesus.
Okay.
The number one answer that most people tell me is Albert Einstein. And there's something very interesting that I've noticed over the year that I've done these interviews. The people who are more inclined to say that they are genius, one, they're creatives. So they're the people who are music producers and doing things through creative expression, which of course taps back to God because he created everything just by speaking it, right? So there's that recognition that these creators are the main ones who will say quickly, like, yeah, I'm a genius. And then the other thing is, the interesting pattern, Michelle, is those people who could identify someone as genius that looked like them, that they shared some attributes with, they were trying to say, yeah, I have genius too. So if they identify their mother, their father, their child as genius, then I saw the connection where they would see it too, because you can't see genius in yourself unless you see genius in somebody that looks like you.
Okay.
Right?
Facts. Yes.
So yeah, hashtag facts. We're gonna get, because you put it in this direction, we can definitely get into who have we been fearfully and wonderfully made in the image and likeness of.
Right. We've been made in his image.
So if we're made in his image, and 1 Corinthians 2:16 says that we have the mind of Christ, then we have access to something that is a part of his genius. He's gifted each of us with something. So yeah, I'll really get into some things. I'm so glad you identified that. But I want to go back. I want to jump back to Einstein for a second, because what I'm not trying to do is to discount his genius. He definitely had a mind for physics that understood some things at a level that nobody else did. And his theories are still being proven. As we have these new telescopes that are peering out into the outreaches of space, they're still seeing his theories hold true. So it's not meant to take away anything from him, but what it is meant to do is to identify the fact that he was just one type of genius. There's a whole spectrum to genius that has nothing to do with physics, that has nothing to do with GPA, that has nothing to do with your IQ. And what we tend to do is we tend to recognize him as genius, but then we put that label of genius on the same pedestal that we put Einstein on, and it's just out of reach of us.
Yeah.
right? And so even our youth, this is it's most important, and I'm most passionate about our youth because if you can't wake up every day and remember my name is Michelle and I'm a genius. When you get out here in the world, has it discriminates against you. People have all of us have prejudices, right? We have prejudices to make the world around us make sense to us. So we'll see somebody like, yeah, no, to make me safe, this person is that. But you have an authority once you meet that person to put aside your prejudice that you use to make yourself safe and say, all right, now I'm gonna let you define who you are to me. But a lot of people don't do that.
Mhm.
People will force that label on us in our youth. And if our youth don't know, hey, look, outside of you recognizing that I'm a genius, if you put anything on me that's less than that, I'm not going to accept it. I'm not going to acquiesce to this thing that makes your world make sense that doesn't take who I am into consideration at all.
I
Right.
love that about this generation.
They
And
are
I sound old when I say that, but
they are very much, they will push back like, nah, no,
right?
that's not gonna fly. But there's still a lot that are going unheard because they still need this self empowerment, this ability to affirm themselves and say like no. And it's the ones who are marginalized that we don't hear from,
Yeah.
that we need to really focus on with this message. But I'm focusing on you today, Michelle. The point that I wanted to make also with Einstein is he looks nothing like you or I. He looks nothing like anybody that's in that picture behind you. And
True.
so if we've continued to attribute genius to this man called Albert Einstein, then it's easy for us to disassociate it from ourselves because we don't look nothing like him.
Mm-hmm.
We need to see ourselves. We talked before we actually got on and started recording. We talked about, I believe, or maybe we started here, I can't remember now, but we were talking about the invisible innovators, the hidden figures. But guess what? When a figure is hidden, but they've offered contributions that have improved the lifestyles of the people around us, the community, the world around us. If we don't know what they look like, to know that their genius contributions were Black, then we might not begin to aspire for greatness ourselves.
True. We have to see it.
Yeah. So that's what this is all about.
Okay.
Just identifying the genius that's within, because most of us, Michelle, quite honestly, are already operating in it. You've already kind of indicated that you're operating in it, but somebody needs to come along and just put that extra label on it and say, you need to know that what you're doing is genius, though.
I like that.
I like it too. That's why we talk.
Okay.
So from here, I wanna give you a quote. Okay, this quote purportedly comes from Einstein, so it's very fitting. And I want to know if you've heard this quote before and how it resonates with you, like how you process it when you hear it. So, are you ready?
Yep, ready.
Here's a quote. If you judge a fish by how well it can climb a tree, it will spend its entire life thinking it's stupid.
Ooh, that's deep.
I'm gonna guess that's your first time hearing it.
I've heard it. I did not know that was Einstein.
That's why I say purportedly, because when I put that on Facebook like dinged me and said like the information you put out here is there's some people who are, I'm like, it doesn't matter who said it. But
yeah,
I first heard it, it was assigned to something that Einstein said.
yeah. And I, having gone through looking at like school systems and as a student myself, and then also having students, children as students, that was something that really helped drive decisions that we made. So we pulled my kids out of public school and put them in private school. There was a tendency for them to label them in public school, and we had a huge challenge with that. I grew up K through 12. Every classroom I sat in, I was the only Black student. That was my experience. Never had a Black teacher, never had a Black classmate until I went to college. So that expectation that's placed on you, even if it's never said out loud, can really make you feel like you're not making the mark, when in reality, that's their mark. I'm here to make my own.
Hey, I like that. So you all in the sauce, Michelle. You going everywhere that I want to go. You're already kind of getting into it, and I really like that. So we're going to talk about the school system and what it does, because it's one thing if somebody explicitly tells you that you don't belong, because you can respond to that and say, no, let me show you how I do belong. But when it's implied, it's never said out loud, and you come into that system, you come into that environment every day, and you feel like a fish out of water, you'll just begin to say some things to yourself, like the quote says, I must be stupid because everybody's just processing information like nothing is wrong, and I'm over here like I don't know that I understand that, and nobody's telling me that there's something wrong with the system, and it's just left up to me to decide that, yeah, I don't belong here.
Mm-hmm.
And so the beauty about this quote, for me, it quickly becomes a metaphor because, Michelle, I know that we've gone through a lot in the past 3 years with COVID. We've seen a lot of things out of order on the planet. But if I open up my window right now and I look outside and see a fish in the tree, I know it's time to get off the planet. It's a wrap.
Yes.
And it's because we know that a fish, like from the beginning of time, a fish is designed, God designed the fish to function in water.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you take this fish out of its element, where it has scales, fins, and gills to function at a high level in water, if you take it out of its element and then say, okay, now I need you to climb this tree, you're setting it up for failure. You're not just setting it up for failure, Michelle. What happens if a fish stays out of water for too long?
It can die.
It's going to die.
Yeah.
It's not even a question. It's going to die, right? And so that's what I feel like I've been charged to do, to identify the dying genius around me and to revitalize, resuscitate, and resurrect the dying genius that I see in people.
All right, take me to the water.
Hey, that's what we're about here. And
all right.
I'm so passionate about it because there's something that God has designed each of us to do. And if we get out of our element and then begin to beat our heads up against something that somebody else has told us, like, you should be doing this, then to me, that is a form of death.
Mm-hmm.
And so
agreed.
We gotta know what our element is. We gotta know what have we been put on this planet to address. And it just so happens that the book that I wrote, which is the same title as this workshop, was given to me in such a way that I believe it helps identify people's genius. And so the three components that God showed me, which can help you get into your genius, are passion, talent, and purpose. Okay? And that first component is really what defines your element. It helps the fish figure out, I belong in water though. Like in my mind, when I see this picture, there's some things that are right in the middle of the picture. There's a tree and there's a fish. But right off camera to the left, there's the water. It's not even that far away from you. Your element is closer to you than you think. But you've been conditioned to just look at this tree and focus on that. Painting your life essence, right? And then to the right off camera is a person, which represents a system that's saying like, yeah, you didn't climb the tree yet? Why haven't you done this yet? Instead of this person recognizing, hey, you're a fish, let me pick you up and put you in your element. Nope. I'm going to actually try and get you to climb this tree. And I had one of my guests say, you know what? I see that person as a predator. A predator wants the fish to die because it's going to get a meal. And some of these systems, they're eating our kids up and spitting them out.
Yeah.
And you know it because you said you pulled your children out of the public school system and put them in private school for I'm sure that very same reason.
Yep.
How many children do you have, by the way, if you don't mind me asking?
I have 3, 18, 19, and 31.
Ah, okay. So man, you want to tell, man, you are my goals. You're where I want to go. I have a 15-year-old and 11-year-old. Just made 15 on Wednesday, actually.
Okay.
So congratulations on it. Sounds like you almost got an empty nest again.
Almost. We got to get this one graduated.
Much closer than I am. So
yes, but it goes by so fast.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I hear that. Yeah. So, getting into this first component, passion. I read a book by a guy, Christian author by the name of Mike Murdoch, called The Assignment. And what he basically said was, hey, look, if you want to figure out what you've been put on this planet to do, what God has created you to do, you got to tap into, well, I don't want to tell you just yet. I want to ask you, just like I asked you who comes to mind when you think of this word genius, what words come to mind when you hear this word passion?
So passion to me, what comes to mind right away is like just something that is all consuming.
Mhm.
So it's something that you feel compelled to do, whether or not you get paid for it, whether or not you are fully equipped for it, but something you can't help but do.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I completely agree with you. I like the way one of my former guests says, they were like, it's the gas in your tank. And so when you
Oh.
begin to come up against an obstacle, that gas in your tank will either have you go through it, around it, over it, or under it, but you're going to get on the other side of it.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it's you chipping away at it little by little or blasting through it. Like when you see this thing, it's like David and Goliath. David didn't care about what his stature was versus the Goliath. He was like, yeah, but the God I serve, though, if he's on my
Right.
side and I believe he is, I'm taking this thing's head off. I don't care what he's been saying for the past 40 days. I don't care what he looks like. I'm getting at him, right? And
Yes.
we'll talk a little bit more about David in a minute, but the thing that a lot of people say, just like I say, most people say genius and Einstein are related. Most people relate love to passion.
Mm.
And Michelle, I'm all about shifting paradigms and kind of approaching things from a different angle. God just made me that way. And so what I want to do is I want to come from the opposite end of the spectrum of love, and I want to focus on what you hate.
Mm-hmm.
The thing, have you ever heard the expression or said it yourself? Man, I hate that with a passion.
I've heard that. I don't
Yeah.
like to use the word hate, but yes, I've heard that.
I understand hate is a
Yeah.
strong word, but to address the giants in our lives, we do have to have a strong emotion that drives us. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's what this guy, Mike Murdoch, talked about. He was like, look, the world is broken. Would you agree that the world is broken?
It is.
And the
Yes.
solution that God made for the world was us.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I'm gonna make you in my image and likeness. You're gonna have my authority. We got birthed into the earth. Sin took away our authority, took away our connection to God. Jesus restored that authority and said, okay, now I need you to see your purpose. How do you advance the kingdom in a way that only you can do? Right. And so what we began to see is the brokenness that's in the world is so ubiquitous, it's so dominant that each of us gets affected by the brokenness in different ways.
Mm-hmm.
And that effect traumatizes us. And it happens early on in our life most times. And so I think you've already told me, I'm gonna ask you explicitly what it is that you hate, or if you want to say dislike to make you feel more comfortable, we can use the word dislike. But you've already kind of hinted at it, because the thing that traumatizes us early on in our life, when we get older, if we are managed to make it through and look back at it, people are like, man, I don't like how I experienced that. And if that thing still exists, if it still operates and it's still oppressing someone else, if it's still marginalizing other people, we've been like, man, I hate that.
Yes.
Matter of fact, when we get around our friends, your friends are like, don't let Michelle see that. If she see that, she's gonna go off. Like, oh man, she saw it. And you pull your soapbox out, you're like, let me tell you something about this.
Yeah.
Right? Let me tell you something about what it is that how that bothers me. And you may say something, Michelle, like, well, that don't bother you.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like you want to agitate other people, like, let me tell you why that should bother you. And it's not everyone's going to share our passion, but we will raise awareness about the thing that we're passionate about. Like you said, whether we get paid for it or not, we'll talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And how we may initially approach and talk about it is, man, somebody should do something about that.
Mm-hmm.
Pointing and saying somebody should do something about that. But if you find yourself saying that too often, Michelle, guess who the somebody is? It's you.
Yes.
God has designed, the scriptures say that what was meant for evil, God used for good, right? The scriptures say that, all things work together for good for them who love the Lord, for those who are the called according to his purpose.
Yeah.
And he will take the brokenness of the world, that evil thing that afflicted you, and he'll grieve your heart the way it grieves him, because it grieves his heart. The brokenness that he sees is not how I intended things to be. Stuff is out of order. But that thing that affected you and your community, it'll grieve your heart how it grieves his, just enough for you to be like, I need to do something about that. And so that's where the passion lies. And so in that definition, Michelle, what is the thing that you're passionate about?
So I like what you said earlier about disrupting systems. That is definitely something that I feel very passionate about doing. And I've been placed in situations to do that in different areas of my life. But the thing that I cannot stand is evangelical racism. Like when people tie their racism to their faith, and then I just can't. So
Michelle, you
that's
had to
something I've
get
been
off.
called to disrupt.
You
What?
told me that you had to get off at a certain time, right? You said the
Yeah.
wrong thing to me because, oh my gosh, we're gonna have to talk offline because that's a whole thing that
Yeah.
moving down to South Carolina, that has bothered me to no end. It bothered me where I was from, where
Hmm.
I had lived for the past 20 years, but it's something about just that Southern, they're so friendly and they're so, but then there's this blind side that they have. And there's this entitlement that they walk in, and they, like you said, they're connected to the very faith that we're supposed to share.
Right.
And I'm
Right.
like, oh no, like that's,
Yes.
I'm gonna try real hard not to go all the way in. I will make you late for your meeting. I'm not gonna do that. But I share in your passion, and it's okay to share passion. I have several things that I hate, and it's okay to have several things that you are passionate about because you may have several talents. Even if you only have one talent, the way that God has designed it, because our talent is God given, He will have
Hmm.
such that it can become transformative enough to adapt to the different things that we're passionate about. Like my talent is I'm a wordsmith. I'm a writer.
Hmm.
You
Yeah.
said that you're a writer. And so I've taken that and I've penned I've written books about hip hop and how it's broken and how to fix it because that bothers me. I hate that. I love
Yeah.
the music. I love the platform. I hate how it's being used right now.
Yes.
He has me talk about, I hate it when people don't know who they are, their identity. That's why I'm talking to you about your identity in Christ as a genius, as having
Hmm.
the mind of Christ, right? And so that one talent, I'm able to use it to address the different societal ills that I see that have afflicted me and that afflicted people who I care about.
Mm. Love
So
that.
let's go back to David and Goliath. So the part of the story that's most interesting, that's easy to look over, once he said, hey, King Saul, I'm gonna go at this giant, I'm gonna get him. What did King Saul do? He said, all right, take my armor and go out there.
Hmm.
And the interesting thing about that, we know David was a young man and King Saul was a full-grown man. David was like, 13, 15. I don't know. He was like either an early teen or a late teenager. And so David saw that right away and was like, no, don't give me that. You're going to get me killed. Like, that's not going to work. You
Yeah.
give me a grown man's nod. Where's my slingshot? He knew what his talent was. He was like, I know what I work well with. I killed lions and bears watching my father's sheep. So give me this slingshot. I don't need all that extra. And again, people will view us and try to tell us this is what you should be doing. This is
Yeah.
not only when they tell us what we should be doing, they'll tell us how we should do it.
Yes.
So somebody will take our talent, take it out of context and say, you know what, that's not really what you do. Use this to do what it is that you're supposed to do. And that's not how it works. And we got to be like David. We got to be like David who said, like, no, I know exactly what works well in my hand, and I'm gonna use that to address this thing. So I want to take a time out for a second because you got me all excited and stirred up. I forgot to mention this. I have a real life example of how we are equipped by the things that drive our passion. Because remember, the passion begins to tell us what our element is. And so I think you're going to appreciate this story. I had a friend who's a principal. She asked me to come talk to 10 little boys at her school. She's like, look, they're struggling. They're having some issues. They need to see somebody that looks like them that can spend some time with them. Can you just come and chop it up with them on a weekly basis? I was like, absolutely. And so one of the things that I was workshopping at the time, I was just getting my feet wet or getting established in this whole genius thing that we're talking about now. So I came in, like, hey, you guys are geniuses. And Michelle, they looked at me like I had cursed them out. They was like, who are you talking to? I am not, nah, you must be in the wrong class, sir. Like, no, I'm not a genius. And I was like, oh, okay. And what I found out was they were third, fourth, and fifth graders. They had all been put in the same class. They were all minorities. And we would have called them special ed back in the day.
Yeah.
Now they're on IEPs, they're on individual education plans based around them having things like ADHD and ADD, being, emotionally imbalanced, being disruptive in class, all of these negative labels they had become accustomed to. So that Michelle, when I came with a positive label to affirm them, they weren't comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Like, well, I don't feel right to me. Because another thing that accepting that role or that label of genius does is it makes you accountable to something.
True.
They weren't
Yes.
accountable to anything. We don't expect anything of you, but to stay in this class all day and tear it up, and then we got to put it together and then start over tomorrow. That's all they were held accountable to. And so I said, okay, I know how to get you guys to talk. And this is where you'll see why I use this word hate. Because if you ask any teenager, preteen, whatever, hey, what do you hate? They'll talk to you for days.
Yeah.
I said, hey, what do you hate though? It was like, do you really want to go there? And the teacher was in the background like, yeah, do you really want to go there, sir? Like, what are you doing? And I was like, no, for real, tell me what you hate. And Michelle, something very interesting happened. These little boys that could never agree on anything, that could never, like, what game to play, when to play, whose seat was it, who hit who first, whatever, they all universally told me the same thing. And it's something you already identified.
The racism.
No, not the racism. They was like, we hate school, Mr. Key.
Oh.
Now what? And it looked like they was like, yeah, we messed your presentation up, didn't you? I said, actually, no, you didn't. Because when I began to define the thing that they hate, I said, the thing that you hate is the thing that you were put on this planet to fix. It's why it agitates you. It's why it annoys you. It's why it has traumatized you and made you feel like you don't belong. But your goal in life is not to run away from this thing, but it's to actually run towards it like David and Goliath and say, I have something for this. So here's what I told him. I said, the 10 of you telling me you hate school lets me know that I'm looking at 10 future educators.
I love that.
And they backed up just like you did. They was like, wait a second, what did you just say? You're tying me to this entity, this system that I want to get out of. And I was like, you want to get out of it because it marginalizes you and it makes you feel like a fish out of water, like you don't belong. But I said, let me tell you how you belong though, because the school system is broken. I've never said that and had a teacher or a staff member not agree with me. Right? I said the school system is broken. It's trying to tell you that you're the person that's broken when in fact the school system is broken. You can't have a square circle, you can't have a square hole, look at a circular peg and say, oh, you're wrong. Like, you just got to get the right hole to fit it in.
Right.
So here's what I told them. I said, look, did you know that there's 8 different learning styles? And of course they were like, no. So I'm like, there's 8 different learning styles, but at most schools are only teaching from 3. And I said, those 3 learning styles, if you don't speak that language, what you hear every day is going to get lost in translation. And you're going to feel like, I don't understand what's being said here. Everybody else seems like, man, I'm stupid. Now you're the fish out of water. And I went a step further. I said, look, the 3 main languages that are being taught in school are, you have to be a left brain thinker, which means you understand math, you're a logical person. It means that it's either that or you receive information verbally and you're able to process it, or you receive information visually and you're able to process it. If you don't speak one of those 3 languages though, I know we say no child left behind, but you're gonna get left behind.
Yeah,
So here's what I said. I said, but what I see in some of you is you're a kinesthetic learner, which means you got to move around to process information. Matter of fact, some of you are athletes because when you get on the field and you're moving and processing information in real time, you're successful.
Yeah.
You get them on the field or on the court, they're successful, but they got to know when they get into that it translates when they get into the classroom. But every time they go to get up, hey, you sit down, be still.
Yeah.
Or you're exploratory or expeditionary, which means you got to put your hands on stuff to process how it moves. But guess what happens when you go to put your hand on something? Hey, keep your hands to yourself. You're like, dang it.
Yeah.
Okay. Or if you have a left hemisphere, that means you also have a right hemisphere. That's the creative side. That's the side that Einstein actually operated from. And he got told that he didn't belong in school, both in secondary and post-secondary education. I don't know if you knew that. His parents got a letter home that said, yeah, you might want to make sure he worked with his hands. He's not picking up what we're putting down here in school. And thank God that he and his parents didn't subscribe to that. And he was allowed to still get into his thought experiments, because he would be in a classroom in college looking out the window and the professor would think that he's daydreaming, would kick him out. Do you know what he was doing?
Processing, probably.
Creatively using the right here to imagine what it would look like to ride a beam of light from the sun to the earth. And that's how he came up with the theory of relativity. But they kicked him out of class though. Thank God though, that he didn't allow that experience to traumatize him enough where he just said, I guess I just have a learning disability. And he embraced it. And so here's how I told these young people to embrace what they have. I said, look, If you take your learning style and realize that it's actually one of the things that you've been gifted to do, to process the information how you process it, come back to the school as a teacher and let your learning style now inform your teaching style. Because now when you have somebody else as a kinesthetic learner and you're a kinesthetic teacher, you're going to connect with them.
Yeah.
You're not going to go through what you went through. When you're exploratory, you're gonna have more exploratory expeditionary lessons in class. And then now the school system has a full representation of all the learning styles. And maybe the school system needs to change and adjust so that now we're matching up the teachers and their learning style with the students and their learning styles and their respective grades.
Mm-hmm.
That's game changing. That's what Montessori is doing.
Yes, they did. Yeah.
And so why not have the public school system adopted it? Well, that's a whole nother conversation. We can't get into why they're not doing that. But the status quo is being accepted. There's not enough people disrupting it to say, like, this is not serving everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And you're marginalizing the solution because you keep telling these kids who are the future solutions and teachers that they don't belong.
Yeah.
And then wondering why there's a shortage in teaching, wondering why everything continues to be the way it is.
Yep. I can definitely see that.
It's revolutionary. See, I'm supposed to be inspired. You got me getting excited. I talk about this a lot, but I don't know why I'm at another level today.
So I'm trying to look these 8 different learning styles up and identify where my kids fall.
Yeah, and there's tests out there that are not not difficult, where you can figure out what your learning style is and then begin to advocate for themselves, and you advocate as a parent for them to say, no, this is my child's learning style. You need to make room for him. And if you can't make room for him, then we need to take him someplace else.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So that's getting into the passion and the talent, right? Because their talent is their learning style. And I have to go to another character in the Bible to really drive home what talent looks like. We know that it's God-given. None of the talent that we have is our own. We're told in the Bible, don't put your talent in the earth, but give God a return on his investment. If you give God a return on his investment by multiplying the talent that's on the inside of us, that's how we do it.
Mm-hmm.
A long time not knowing how to answer that question. I would tell kids all the time, don't put your talent in the earth. We know what that looks like. A lot of the entertainers are doing that, right? And they're rewarded at the Grammys for doing that. But it's like, how do you recognize, hey, this is not my talent, and I have a responsibility to give God a return on his investment. Mm-hmm. And so, but that's not the point of why I brought up talent. That's just a little extra, right?
Okay.
But when it comes to talent, we go to Moses, because Moses, once God told him explicitly, this is what you've been destined to do, to free my people from Egypt. Moses made excuses like right away. Well, I don't speak well. And God is like, dude, I made your mouth. Like, I know what your limitations have been. And he's like, but I'm still choosing you. And Moses kept giving them excuses. So the first thing he said was, all right, I'm gonna give you your brother Aaron. And Moses was still saying, I can't do this. So God was just like, all right, brother, what is that in your hand? He was like, well, it's just my staff. He's like, put that on the ground. You know how this goes. You put it on the ground, it turns into a snake.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. After he runs away, he's like, come back, pick it up by the tail, it turns into a staff again. He's like, you're equipped with everything that you need, go. Mm-hmm. And so our talent is often already in our hand. It's something that's common to us that we've kind of pushed to the side, like, oh, that's just my staff, right? That's just my pen for you. Mm-hmm. It's right. It's not nothing special. Yes, it is. Stop overlooking it. You know why it's so common to us though, Michelle?
Because it comes so naturally, right? Yeah.
It comes so naturally.
Yeah.
Why it comes so naturally. Have you ever thought about why it comes so naturally to us?
Well, I mean, for me, I think because it's a divine gifting. Mm-hmm. And that it's something that I'm supposed to be perfecting myself. So
you're supposed to be perfecting it. But the thing that is on the inside of us, this talent, it didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It was given to us generationally through our family, through our lineage. And that's why it's so common to us. We're like, oh, we all cook. Like we are a family of cooks. And we just kind of brush it off like, that's just what we do. But it's so amazing when we look at other people. We're so good at identifying other people as genius. We're so good at recognizing other people's generational talent. Again, we look at entertainers, you're like, well, they come from a family of actors. That makes sense.
Yeah.
We applaud them. They come from a family of basketball players. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Comes from LeBron James. He should be playing basketball. But then we fail to see it in ourselves. Like, what is it? I do come across people who are like, I don't have a talent, and I'm like, yeah, you do. You're just written it off because it's so common. It's all around you. It's like if you look at your parents, your grandparents, your great grandparents, your cousins, you'll see it. It's there. It's present.
Yeah.
But you're either looking at yourself and comparing and saying, well, I don't cook like they cook, or I don't do it like how they do it. It doesn't matter. You're not supposed to do it how they do it. You have to make your own mark. You said that early on.
Mm-hmm.
You got to make your own mark and understand what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm going to turn it back to you. You've already implied this, but I want it to be said explicitly. What is your talent, Michelle?
So the one that I'm developing the most now, I think, is the writing.
Mm-hmm.
And when I think about, like, I've always written. I've have always had a pen in my hand. I've always done writing for other people, though. So, like, I would take on tasks and do public relations. That's my degrees in public relations. So I would write press releases and do marketing writing. I did a lot of editing. I've edited books, but it wasn't until 2020 when I felt inspired to write for myself.
Okay.
And that's when I started working on my novel. And that's when I think the talent and the passion really came together, because I wasn't writing for an assignment because somebody said, we need an article about this.
Yep.
It was what's in here and get that out on the page.
You said something. See if I can remember it. And when your talent is used to help someone else's vision, sometimes you'll get discouraged because they're like, well, no, I don't want you to write it this way, write it that way. And that so you begin to kind of be like, oh, okay, maybe I don't really have this thing that I thought that I had. But I like how you're recognizing that you've always had this in your mind. I'm looking for a scripture for you right now. I need you to hear this.
Okay.
It's one of my key scriptures for myself, since we share the same. I call myself a wordsmith, and I let my children know. I don't know if you heard me say this, but my children are authors. It's because I began to tell them, hey, look, if this thing is on the inside of me, it's probably on the inside of you too. And I didn't force it on them, but I reinforced it, and they ate it up, and they began to write, and like they were selling books like more than I could sell my own at one point in time.
Wow.
And it's not to boast on us. It's just to let you know the practicality of it, because we got to stop waiting. Like you got to wait until you're a certain age before you release the book and you're author. Like, no, you don't.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So here's my scripture for you. It's from Psalm 45:1. Psalm 45:1. It says, my heart is inditing a good matter. I speak of the things which I have made touching the king. My tongue is the pen of a ready writer. Right. You never heard it before, right?
I have not. And I received that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Also, Ecclesiastes 12:12 says, of the making of books, there will be no end.
Okay, I need to do me a wordsmithing on the word writer books. That's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And so this is me, taking the talent that I have and multiplying it in others because it's in you already. And I just want to bring it to the surface and be as intentional as you can with it, because the thing of it is, the talent that you have, here's how I see it working for you. Because if I can jump to the last component of purpose, your life is really simple. It's to identify the talent that God has given you. Because when you look at the brokenness in the world, well, time out again. If you look around your house and you see something that's broken and you assess it and you feel like, you know what, I can fix that. The first thing that you're going to look for once you feel like you can do something about it is a tool, right?
Yeah.
Not any tool, but the right tool for the right job. And that's what your talent is. Your talent is the right tool for the right job. That job is the thing that your passion defines for you. And so what you've got to do is, okay, how do I what's my purpose in life is to take my talent as a tool and being a wordsmith and apply it to, hey, I hate the fact that there's this evangelical racism in our church. It's a bane to the existence of the church, but people don't know it. And you want to bring disruption to the church so that people can see it and begin to repent, to renew their mind about this thing that they had a blind eye for. And so even though, pause for a second again, what's the name of your novel, by the way? Do you have a name for it yet?
Yeah, so it's called Remington, A Tale of Two Cities.
Okay. All right. Intriguing.
Mm-hmm.
So here's the thing that I see with where you're going. My first book was a book of poetry, and I couldn't see beyond. That was such a huge undertaking that I couldn't see the books that were going to come after it.
Okay.
I feel like this book that I'm doing this workshop on is like the thing that God was really trying to get me to write, but he had to have me focus on the thing that was right in front of me first. He's like, you know what, you were introduced to poetry, to writing through poetry.
Mm-hmm.
19. So he said, go ahead and explore that. Sharpen your sword. Just start getting your craft perfected in that. And I did. I went to work. I was like, I don't know what this is because I'm a logical person. I love math. But I was like, this thing that's on the inside of me, it literally got unlocked in me at a low point in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And so the book of poetry came out. But once that was then behind me, and I was like, wow, I was able to accomplish that. The Lord was like, good. You have the pen of a ready writer. There's more for you to write. And I looked around and I was like, oh, I can write about that. And so you getting this novel to market, as important as it is for you to get this novel to market, it's not just about the story within the contents of the pages. It's about what comes after that. And what comes after that is what you've already identified. How do you help people see this evangelical racism within the church? And then not just help them see it, but how do you help them resolve it? How you help them to repent and renew their minds so that they can begin to eradicate it. Because there's a thing that we can see as minorities, but genius is all about, hey, look, a thing that I can do by myself and a thing that you can do by ourselves, if we put it together, we can do a thing that we can't do without each other.
Yes.
So that's the point. Racial reconciliation is very much about that. There's some resources that our friends on the other side of the aisle, so to speak, have that unfortunately we don't have. So when we take a message and then pair it with their resources, now we can do a thing that we couldn't do on our own. And I see this book, I don't know what the title of it is yet, but I see this book being that. I see this book being an execution of your genius.
I received that. Thank you. That is that. See, I wanted to do, when I started writing it, I wanted to do it as kind of a manual to help with racial reconciliation within different various systems with the church predominantly, but it wasn't broad enough. And I felt like I pivoted after doing a writer's workshop into making it fiction so that it would bring along other readers who are not into church or the matters of the church, but they would read a love story about a person experiencing those things. So that's why I turned it into a novel.
Also, the Remington, A Tale of Two Cities addresses that issue?
Yeah, so it's A Tale of Two Cities because it compares the way that this Black suburban family experiences the city of Remington as compared to their white counterparts experience in healthcare, church, the school system, the corporate world, local politics, and all that. So it's the way that it's the same place, but and it ranks top 10 city and places to live in Illinois year after year. Yeah. But Black people are not experiencing it that way, getting stopped by the police. And it's a fictional town, but it could be any town. Yeah. Yeah.
That's amazing. That's genius.
Yeah.
So you're already there. I didn't know that the novel was addressing that passion that you have already. It's beginning to fix it. And that's what good art does. Art doesn't just entertain for entertainment's sake. It tells a story. It imparts something on the inside of the viewer that they wouldn't receive otherwise. Because sometimes if you're very clinical about white privilege and about the things that you're addressing in this book, people are they're going to dismiss it right away. Like, that's too blunt. I want to receive that, but they'll receive it inside of a well-written story though.
Yes.
And that's why Jesus told parables. He was like, yeah, if I tell you that the kingdom is at hand and I told you the full breadth of what that's going to mean for you, you're not going to receive it.
You can't. Yeah.
I'm going to tell it to you in these stories though. And
yes.
Time is going to reveal itself because you're going to keep processing it in a way that you understand through agriculture. And when it really hits you, the real truth of the matter, you're going to be like, oh, snap. And you can't take it away from the person at that point because it was allowed to simmer and marinate over time, but it wasn't so abrasive that you just automatically rejected it.
Yes. Yes.
And so I'm very happy to
Yes.
to connect what you're doing, what you've written, to your specific and unique genius, Michelle.
Yes. I'm excited about getting it out there.
Yeah, and that's a whole nother conversation for us to have. I hope
Mhm.
that I can help you get it to market. But like I said, that's a whole separate conversation, and I
Yeah,
know
we'll,
we have
we'll
some
do that
places
next
to
time.
go. So what I want to do, just as we close, is just reiterate and bring back how we started this and
Mhm.
ask you, Michelle, do you consider yourself to be a genius?
I do. Yes.
Yeah, there wasn't as much of a hesitation and putting it pause this time
Yeah,
around.
we don't even need to frame that up in a pretty box anymore. Yes, I am a genius. I might add that to my handle now.
We gotta act
Yeah.
like Wile E. Coyote. Like, remember
Yeah, I'm
Wile
gonna go ahead and put that in my
Like, Wile E. Coyote, super genius.
I might put that in my bio, that word specifically, because it's not in there right now. So yes.
Amen. This has been a true pleasure of mine to have you on the show. This has been Manu Forte Ministries presents Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny. I have been your host, Reggie Key, and this has been my genius guest, Michelle Bannister-Williams. Michelle, it's my uncommon cue to see the genius in you.
Thank you.
You are very and certainly welcome.
Thanks for joining us for this week's episode. Make sure you pick up the book, Common Genius, Uncommon Destiny, by my dad, Reggie Legend, available on Amazon and at inkwellspoken.com. Connect with us at inkwellspoken on all social media platforms. If you enjoy our content, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload.